develop bodhicitta, the mind that wishes to achieve its full potential for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so we're going to talk about the second method that we have in order to develop bodhicitta, which is exchanging oneself and others. And then there are a couple of questions that are still there that need to be answered, and some other things will come up probably. Motivation. First, give ourselves a couple of minutes to calm the mind, to let the mind settle down. So bring your awareness to your body. Or to your breath. Let all your thoughts calm down. Or I could say, bring all your thoughts to the present moment. And then set a positive motivation. By first thinking why you, for yourself, are here. What is your intention? And you can formulate it for yourself. And then think of your good fortune. That you have this human life, that you have met the teachings, that you have the conditions in which you can listen and practice the teachings, and how fortunate you are. That is already so amazing. But when we look around, there's so many sentient beings who do not have that good fortune. But all these beings somehow have contributed to that fortunate state that you are in at the moment. And so by recognizing the kindness of others, you try to develop an open heart that wishes to be of benefit to all of them. By sharing whatever you have learned, by developing your mind more and more, and with that becoming more wise, more compassionate, more skillful, and benefiting them in that way. And feel how that opens your heart, opens your mind. And with that motivation, you engage in the teachings. And then I'm going to give the mic to Pema, director of Tushita, and she would like to talk to you. Minutes.
Thank you, Venerable. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good evening. Thank you so much all for joining us, for your presence for this week, and I also want to say special thank you for all of you for being so patient despite all these technical difficulties. This week we had a little bit trouble with the internet, so I'm extremely sorry for the trouble, but thank you so much for sticking with us, though there was a bit of issue with the internet. So yeah, thank you so much all for that. And I want to thank you, Venerable Jamyang, so much for doing this course. Tushita and all of us are very fortunate to have you around at this time to teach, to come up and teach. Thank you so much. Venerable, now during lockdown did, like, this is the third course Venerable did already during the lockdown. Thank you so much, Venerable, for being very generous and kind to share the Dhamma with us. And yeah, so if any one of you would like to make any offerings to Venerable Jamyang, so when you register for this course, you got a link from us. So in yeah, the donation link is given there on the mail. So please refer back to that mail, so you can make the offerings on the same link to Venerable Jamyang. But in the comment box, just mention Venerable Jamyang's name so that we can differentiate whether the offering is for Venerable Jamyang or for Tushita. But for Tushita, since you have paid already, so I don't want to ask anything more for Tushita, but the offerings are most welcome for Venerable Jamyang. And yeah, and I want to also thank you, Felipe, for all the technical support that he has been giving for the course. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the last day of the course, and happy weekend and good evening or good morning. And thank you. Be well and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So our last session, exchanging self and others. So this is a little bit different than the technique that we did this morning. And one of the differences is that you do not necessarily have to believe in past and future lives. How does it go? Training to exchange oneself and others is that one first contemplates the benefits of exchange of others and the faults of not doing so. And then the second aspect of training the mind is habituating yourself to exchanging self and others in thought and then also in action. And then the third one is meditating on how to exchange oneself and others. So we'll start with contemplating the benefits and the faults of, so the benefits of exchanging self and others and the faults of not doing so. So in many texts, it talks about the benefits of cherishing others or exchanging oneself for others, and the suffering that comes from not doing so. And so, for instance, in engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds or in the Bodhisattva Charya written by Shantideva, it says, whoever wishes to quickly protect self and others must exchange self for other. Practice this excellent secret. Whatever worldly joy there is arises from wishing for others, arises from wishing for your own happiness. So what that basically says is that whenever we cherish ourselves, which means whenever I'm self-centered, when I'm self-obsessed, when I'm self-absorbed and act just out of my own interest, what I'm creating is just the causes for problems, the causes for suffering. And so by contemplating the disadvantages of the self-cherishing mind is that we have been cherishing ourselves since beginningless time. And so we have been doing that, and look where we are. Now, we are quite fortunate compared to many sentient beings, but at the same time, we are still totally stuck in samsara, in cyclic existence. We haven't come out. We have not attained liberation from samsara, liberation from all suffering. We are still in samsara. And so we still lack true freedom, which is the freedom from the disturbing emotions. And that is because of the self-cherishing mind. Every time the self-cherishing mind is active, disturbing emotions are produced. When disturbing emotions are produced, they leave imprints in the mind for suffering to be experienced. So they say not one positive result can come from our self-cherishing mind. But due to acting out of the self-cherishing mind, we can create the causes for great loss. Out of the self-cherishing mind, we can lose things in our daily life. You know, for instance, if you are in a relationship with somebody who's very needy and their self-cherishing mind is very much there in your face saying, oh, stay with me, I need you, I love you so much. You know, what you create is you create that person one day is going to leave you. And say, you know, your self-cherishing mind are so holding on to me. So the harder, the stronger we hold on to things, you know, then it is, we almost create the conditions that we're going to lose it. So if I have so many negative, if so many negative results have come from following the self-cherishing mind and not one positive result have come from that, why don't we change it? Why don't we cherish others? You know, by logic, by reasoning, we can think about all benefits that come from cherishing others. And in scriptures, it is also talked about. So why are we not doing it? We cherish ourselves. You know, what we do is we just, what do I need? You know, I need better clothing, I need better shelter, I need better reputation, there is something that we can have better. And so we go after that. But even if we get what we have in mind, still we're not satisfied. You know, want to have something more or something better or something else. No matter what we achieve, when it comes from the self-cherishing mind, which means that attachment is in the mind, there is never going to be satisfaction. There is always something missing. But if we are able to practice exchanging self for others, when we put the needs and the wants of other sentient beings before our own needs, you know, then that lack of contentment that we feel inside, that will disappear. And instead of that, we will experience only joy. That's what it says. So renouncing self and cherishing others doesn't mean that we should allow others to do whatever they like to us, you know. In some texts, you know, when you're very advanced on the path, yes, then you can make these aspirational prayers. But we, in our condition, we have to also look where we are at. So when we cherish ourselves, what we do, we work for the fulfillment of the positive causes and conditions that bring positive results for ourselves in the long run. And we eliminate the negative causes and conditions that bring negative results for ourselves in the future. You know, that is a healthy way of cherishing ourselves. And so when we renounce self-cherishing and we try to cherish others, then we do the same thing for other sentient beings. So we help them to fulfill their positive causes and conditions that bring them future happiness. And we help them to eliminate negative causes and conditions that will result in not having future suffering. So that doesn't mean that, you know, cherishing others, that you do whatever people ask you to do, that you do whatever people want from you, that you not at all. You know the law of cause and effect. You know what brings short-term happiness, what brings long-term happiness, and you encourage sentient beings to work in accordance like that, because you have their best interests at heart. We cannot change anyone. We cannot tell anyone what to do. You know, everyone is their own master. They make their own decisions, but we can make suggestions. And if people ask us, we can give advice. And if people need, we can show them. Right? So we are willing to do that at any time that it is needed. But that is not determined by what I want. That is determined by what that other sentient being needs, where they are at. So cherishing ourselves doesn't exist inherently. That means it is not part of our nature. It is a way, it is like a habit of thinking that we have. It is like a point of view that we have due to habit. So when we train our mind, we can just develop another habit. We say all sentient beings are the same in wanting to have happiness, wanting to be free of suffering. That is like a reality. We cannot change that reality. It cannot be changed due to causes and conditions. It is inside each and every being. But our self-cherishing mind is not such a natural reality. So this is just due to habitual karmic patterns. And so when we change our habit, these patterns can change as well. So what we do is we change, instead of thinking about what I need and what I want and what makes me happy, we think about what makes others happy. We change self for others. And so then we cultivate the habit that the welfare of others is more important than our own welfare. And when we get more habituated to that, at a certain point, we will naturally have the thought that is cherishing others, in the same way as that we now naturally have the thought that we cherish ourselves. So that's what we try to do. In the beginning, it might be insane, you know, like, well, if I'm not taking care of myself, who's going to take care of me? And how does that work? But training goes slowly, slowly, right? So you start where you are. You start maybe in your meditation. And then when you get a taste of it, maybe you practice that in certain occasions. And when you see that that goes well, you practice even more. And then you practice more on your meditation cushion. And then slowly, slowly, the wisdom will come how to do that skillfully for yourself and for others. And then people come always with the wildest questions and say, but how can we apply this concept to terrorists and rival armies? You know, terrorists, what is a terrorist? Where does a terrorist come from? Who started? Human beings who want to be happy, want to be free of suffering. And they see that their family and their community also wants to be free of suffering, and they are willing to give their life for that. And then they choose a method that is actually causing them a lot of suffering, you know, but their intention is coming from, I want to free myself and my family and my people from suffering. Which suffering? You know, who is inflicting the suffering on them? It's the people who call them the terrorists, right? They're bombing their houses and their country and don't give them anything to live from. And so then at the end, they suffer so much that they are willing to give their life. Yes. So one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So what we can think is, you know, they also want to be happy. How can you help them? I always think, you know, the first way to help terrorists is that we stop bombing their countries. Why do we bomb their countries? Because there is a lot of greed, right? If we really look into the world where all the problems are coming from, it is from greed. And so the one who is very greedy and has the most weapons, you know, they terrorize others. And then when others stand up, then they are called a terrorist. So I think first you have to stop your own harm and then check if there is still someone who wants to give their life for their country and for their family. Most likely not. But if they are, you know, you can see if you can make friends with them and then talk about what brings harm and what doesn't. But what you can also do is on your meditation cushion. If you put yourself really in the shoes of a terrorist and think why the terrorist is doing what they're doing, and they do it is they want to be happy, then you visualize that you're going to give them that happiness. Right. Is that all right, Somya? So we can, right, doesn't mean that we practice that on the mental level. And then when it happens on the practical level, you know, when somebody comes and they want to shoot you because you are part of one side of the country and they are part of another side of the country, you take care of yourself, right? When you can, you run away. You're not gonna let them shoot you if you have the chance to run away. But in your mind, you try to see that where they are coming from, they are trying to free themselves from suffering, and it's not that skillful. So the practice happens on the mental level, not necessarily on the physical level. I'm going to let you do a little bit of journaling for the last time, if that's okay. Let me see what the questions. So try to write something down or think about at what moments in time brings your self-cherishing mind you in trouble or causes it conflict. What do you feel is at stake? And how do you try to solve this? You know, when that self-cherishing mind comes up, what kind of situations is that? What are you trying to defend or what are you trying to get? And then how do you do that with your self-cherishing mind? And then you think about how can you change your attitude so that the conflict disappears? And of course, you have to think about what if I practice exchanging oneself for others? What if I would cherish others? How would that change the conflict? How would I change? I'm just reading the questions that you put in. So what is the self-cherishing mind? So let me just read the questions for you or the comments. Maidav G says, I realized after the introductory course with you in November 2019 that my biggest enemy was myself. I had to reprogram my way of thinking. And has that helped? Have you been able to do so? And has that helped? I would like to know from you. Then Emilio says, I don't think I'm getting the question and that I don't see how the self-cherishing mind can get me into trouble. Perhaps because too much, and that's what I'm working on. So, are you a people pleaser? That is what comes to my mind. You know, people pleasers often think about others, what they can do for others, how they can help others. But they are not coming from a place of, you know, there is love and there is compassion, and that is sincerely, but it is mixed with fear. And so when you are at that point, and I'm projecting that, I'm not sure if that is the case, but maybe other people recognize it in their own mind. So when you are like that, you don't have a strong feeling of self, and then you don't have the feeling that you're actually thinking about yourself. But that feeling that is thinking about yourself is deeply hiding, is definitely there. But maybe you have not been allowed to connect with that. And if that's the case, you first need to do that. You first need to connect with that self that is hiding deep down inside you. And maybe, you know, that has been made feel guilty and feel bad about itself. And so you first have to heal your relationship with that self. And then after some time, you know, and I can talk about myself. I had this kind of mind. And then after some time, I start to realize that, you know, I always thought I'm always working for the sake of others. I'm always helping others. I'm always thinking about others. But I realized there is a deep fear underlying, and that fear makes that I'm not even dare to think about myself, you know, but that's not healthy. So then you have to first work with that and somehow make it safe enough for yourself that you can think about yourself. And then you're going to see the delusions that come from that, you know, the attachment and the aversion. And then maybe you can also start to recognize, oh, what I was doing, there was always like a hidden agenda there. You know, it looked like I was selfish, but I also wanted something from others. So I don't know if that's helpful for you. Maybe I'm totally wrong, you know, I'm just talking about myself. So how can we prevent resentment from building up with us, even as we practice exchanging ourselves with another and putting their needs ahead of our own? So you can only, that's what I believe, you know, exchanging self for others is on the basis of the mind of renunciation. If we start too quickly with exchanging self for others and we do not have a healthy self-compassion and a healthy renunciation, if we do not know what creates happiness, if we still somehow believe that if I get what I need, I'm going to be happy, you know, if I give myself what I need, I'm going to be happy. If you still believe that, and these are deep-seated beliefs, they're not going from one day to the other. Then when we start with that attitude, resentment, like, why is nobody taking care of me? You know, or we have the feeling that people take advantage of us. You know, they see, oh, she's a Buddhist. She's working for the sake of others. I'll ask her. She's never going to say no, you know. And then when we have trouble with setting up boundaries, when we're not really clear on how we need to take care of ourselves at this moment in time, what is healthy for us, what is not healthy for us, then we can easily get a feeling of people make use of us, or, you know, we develop resentment inside of us. And I would say if that happens, you have to, you know, when resentment comes, your motivation is not completely coming from the right place. Your own needs are there screaming, what about me? So you have to go to that first. Yeah, and follow the steps that we went through in the course. And this is something that happens very often. You know, we connect with Buddhism, especially if you have the habit of putting others first. You love Mahayana Buddhism because everything that you have been doing your whole life, it's all there, and you know so well how to do that. But, you know, if then you start engaging in that, at a certain point, the resentment starts to come up. And then you realize maybe the way I did it was not exactly as how Buddhism means it. So Isabel says, when my opinion is taken for granted, as it would be a tacit agreement without saying, being taken on me the responsibilities of everybody, including me. My freedom is at stake, although I turn it around, realizing that their freedom is really important to their health. Then as I engage with the responsibilities, I tap into childless loneliness and discover the mothering Dharma in my mother and the Dharma itself. So it is really important that we heal ourselves first, that cherishing others is on the basis of a healthy renunciation. You know, if we look into the Lam Rim and we see where is the Mahayana, where do we start with exchanging self for others, that is really in the great scope. It's not the end of the path, but it is it is preceded by the path of a being of small capacity and the path of being of a beings of intermediate capacity. And so the being of intermediate capacity is the being who achieves liberation for themselves alone. And even if we want to work for the benefit of others, that can only be independence upon the wish to find liberation from all suffering for oneself, and to start engaging in these practices that are going to help you to do so. So you working for the sake of your happiness, you do that by you stop engaging in harmful actions, you engage in actions that are beneficial for others, and virtuous actions for your happiness. If you have a lot of disturbing emotions, spend a lot of time maybe meditating, calming down the mind, settling down the mind. But when the mind is kind of stable and kind of content, you know, you go out and you benefit sentient beings. Or at least in your mind, you do that. For your happiness. You have to tell yourself, that's how samsara works, you know. We cannot say with the self-cherishing minds, oh, that's not fair, that samsara works like that, that I have to work for others, for myself to get happy. I cannot change that one, you know, that is just how it is. So Madhavji, who was in the course in November last year, she stopped watching, or he, I don't know if you're he or she, I thought you were a she, but I stopped watching the news and started being kind to myself, maybe. Chandrikas, how will you define skillfulness, which you mentioned, to act skillfully? So to act skillfully, you know, due to the way our mind works, when I talk about the self and how we hold on to the self in a way that the self doesn't exist, and that we somehow add qualities to the self that are not really there. We make it more permanent, unitary, and independent than it exists in actuality. So when we start to think, oh, that is all not there, we actually normally we take away too much, you know, and then we realize, oh, that was too much. I have to put a little bit back. And when we put a little bit back, we put back too much, because we do not find that middle. And I think the same is with skillful actions. You start to change your mind first. You start to change your attitudes, and then you're not sure how to act. And so you try. And then you have to reflect afterwards and say, that was a bit too much. A bit too much this way, a bit too much that way. I gave too much from myself. I could have given a bit more of myself, you know, and so you keep reflecting on that. And the more you understand the nature of reality, the more you develop loving kindness and compassion in your heart. Then with that, you engage in actions, and then your actions become more and more skillful. But I couldn't tell you, this is how you become more skillful. You know, I do it by trial and error, and by by checking, when I feel something goes wrong, or I get negative reactions, or I feel not happy with what I'm doing, I go back to and check my own behavior. I check my mind, and I think, where is it not in line with the teachings? Where am I doing something that can explain what I'm experiencing? And then with that, I adjust, and for me, having lived by abandoning myself so strongly for so many years, I first had to learn to be selfish, and that still feels weird to do things for myself. But I can also feel that when I take care of myself in a healthy way, really not giving myself what I want, because sometimes, of course, you do that, but taking care of myself for me is very difficult, so every time when I engage in these actions, I feel resistance. I don't like it, but I can feel over the years there is benefit. And then the more benefit there is of taking care of myself in a healthy way, the easier it is for me to set my boundaries, the easier it is for me to stay happy when I do things for others, the easier it is. So somehow I get skills, by doing that. But it is, for me, trial and error, I don't know if that's good enough for you, Chandrika. Mashkovich, absolutely. This is what I'm working on now, recognizing and learning to connect with myself and stop focusing on other people. What I do is I always have somehow in my mind that I do that so that eventually I can be really of benefit, because the way I try to be of benefit was my survival mode. So that was not really benefiting. But what I'm learning about myself is still for the benefit of others, because eventually I want to be able to go back to serving others. Don't ever abandon others and say, I'm just going to do this for me. I don't care about others anymore. You have them in your mind, but they're not your main focus. But they are your main focus. But in order to get to that focus, you have to take care of yourself. The messages come faster than I can answer. So then Andreas is sharing an article that was very helpful for him. So I will copy that and I'll send it to every one of you. Thank you for that. Then I need to go back. I'll do 2 more and then I'll finish the teaching, okay? And then I'll go back to the questions as well. So I didn't put a discussion group in today because I felt, well, we have some questions that I still need to answer. Why couldn't you dare to think about yourself? That's a very personal question, because I had a mother who didn't allow me to. Okay, let's go more. My mother, she actually, from her side, she totally renounced herself. But the way she did it, it was all about her. And we all had to, as children, all had to serve her so that she could serve us, And I think she learned that from her mother. And sometimes I think these ways of behaving, they are passed on from generation to generation. And they're based upon wrong thinking. They're not necessarily coming from a mind that wishes wrong, There was a lot of goodness in my mother, but the way she did things, it was actually about her. And yeah, it's a little bit complex. So I think somehow we're all trapped in these ways of behaving, and to undo that, we have to look for a long time from many angles, and I'm still looking, still learning more. You know, there's so much to learn and depends upon these dysfunctional patterns of behaving. Because when you grow up in it, it is totally normal for you. And then you come in contact with these teachings, and slowly you start to see how maybe insane it was. And then, you know, it gives you a lot of material to transform your mind. Amelia says, I think it's not always 100% that way, but I see that there could be a component of what you're saying in some actions. Yes, I think you sometimes send me again, isn't it, when I don't mention it? Moscovich says, I read yesterday that the most compassionate beings have very strong understanding of boundaries. Yes. You know, sometimes allowing people to come over your boundaries and ask too much from you is unhealthy for you, but it is also not good for them. So being able to say, sorry, I can't do that, is sometimes the most compassionate thing that you can do. So what I want to, I'll stop a little bit with the questions. I will come back to that. But what I would like to do is give you the stages of meditating. Oh, no, first I had something else, wait. So how do we do that? Exchanging self and others, you know? How do we train our mind doing that? So, for instance, your enemy, at a certain point in time, you had an enemy, you couldn't stand that person. And then you're walking over the street and you have a fall, or you're on your bike and your skirt gets in the wheel of the bike and you fall, and who's there? That person that you cannot stand, you know? And that person is full of genuine concern and said, oh, how can I help you? How are you feeling? Is your leg hurting? Do you need to, shall I call an ambulance for you? And maybe they need to call an ambulance, and that person stays with you all the time, talking sweet to you, you know, maybe calling your family to inform them, maybe whatever. He's taking care of everything so that you, while you are going through this stressful event, you actually feel quite relaxed, and you feel that person, and you feel, what a nice person. And so he comes and visits you in the hospital and maybe brings flowers, or he or she, and you become friends, right? And so maybe when that person was still your enemy, every time when you heard his or her name, fear arose in your mind, or anger arose in your mind, or this nasty feeling like, don't talk about that person, you know, I really don't like them. But now, once you have gone through that event with that person, you're actually very happy when you hear anything about that person. So the only thing that has happened is that you have familiarized with a different attitude. Instead of aversion arising in dependence upon that person, you have now attachment arising in dependence upon that person. So this is how we can exchange self and others. So at the moment, we have an attitude of neglecting others, and we never neglect ourselves, you know. But we can change that, and we can focus upon others, that we don't neglect them, that we are aware of them, that we think of them, that they are part of our life, even in the moments that we are on our own. And so we do that by thinking a lot about the faults of the self-cherishing mind and the suffering that comes from that. And, you know, we can also, how we do that is by we could say we are all human beings, you know. So I'm going to put myself in your shoes and think, how is that for you? That is one way that can help to exchange self and others. Or we can think about the interdependent nature of our existence. You know, although in this life we might not go well together, you know, but if I can make friends with you, then there might be a long-term benefit of that. And even if I can't make friends with you, that doesn't mean that on a mental level, I'm not friendly towards you, right? I'm not going to hold on to the animosity that I feel, the anger that I feel, the aversion that I feel. I'm not going to hold on to that. Even if you don't like me, even if you harm me, I still wish you well. And so we can also learn to think about us instead of me. You know, we are all in this together, right? We are in this adventure in 2020, which is quite a crazy adventure, but we are all in this together. And so trying to get out of this yourself, it's not going to happen. So try to think of us. This is about us. How can we do that? And so when we cherish others, we develop a lot of good qualities. You know, the empathy, the loving kindness, the compassion, they all arise in dependence upon cherishing others. Body. And so then in the text it says, your body was not always your body, right? It's actually coming from your mom and dad. And so you started to call that your body, but nothing of that is yours. It is actually from your mom and dad. But you got habituated to calling it yours. So that's just a conditioning. So in the same way, you can cherish another body in the same way as that you cherish your own body. Just different perspective. Sometimes it helps when you see sentient beings and you think, what if I would be born in a body like that? And you try to feel how that feels, you know. And I do it sometimes with animals. Like imagine that you are reborn as a bird. How would that feel? You know, how would life look like when you are a bird? And imagine that and feel that and make it real. And you can do that with many sentient beings. And that helps you to get their perspective. And when you do that, you know, something, I don't know what happens, but something happens in the heart, that you become more open, that you become more understanding, that you become more tolerant. These qualities come from just putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, even if they don't have shoes, but is independence upon each other. That self is not existing inherently, and the other is also not existing inherently. And some say, you know, if I'm standing at this side of the river, I call that this side because I'm standing here. And then I call the other side, that is the other side of the river. But if I would be at the other side of the river, I call that side this side, and the side where I am now, would call that the other side. So this side and the other side, self and other, they arise in dependence upon each other. They do not exist from their own side. They do not exist inherently as self and other. They are mutually dependent upon each other. So what I believe is this side is more important than that side. But next time I might be at that side, you know. And then also what people sometimes say is, at this side, there is only one person. And at that side, there is everybody else. And I'm just working for this side. So that means I only get the merit of working for this side, for one person. So what if I would use my energy to work for the benefit of everyone on that other side? First of all, I'm only one and there are so many, you know, so if I sacrifice my own happiness for the happiness of others, isn't that more important that these numberless sentient beings are going to be happy than that I'm happy? And then in terms of merit that I create, if I work for the benefit of numberless sentient beings instead of just my own happiness, the merit that I get with every action is in accordance with for how many sentient beings I engage in that action. So if I have numberless sentient beings in my mind by engaging in an action, my merit is in accordance with that. So then you can create huge merit in a very short period of time by having all sentient beings in your heart, the happiness of all sentient beings. All right, that's a little bit what I have to say, and then I can go through the stages of meditation. And while you were journaling, I made that quickly. So I didn't give it a title. But so we talk about the 7-point cause and effect instruction, and then we have the instruction of exchanging oneself for others. And Lama Tsongkhapa, who is the head of the Gelugpa tradition, which is what we study in this tradition, he put these two together, he merged them together, and then he came up with 11 points that has all the points of both methods together. And so how do we meditate when we bring these two methods together? Oh, I need to share that with you, right? You can't see that when I'm just looking at that myself. Share. All right. So first of all, we meditate on equanimity, visualizing friend, enemy, stranger, and then with the meditation that we did yesterday. So you meditate first on that. And in the 7-point cause and effect instruction, that is a prerequisite. And so here is the first point. Which is the first in the 7-point cause and effect. And I will put this in the folder so you can have access to that. So then you recognize the kindness of sentient beings when they were your mother. So recognizing all sentient beings as your mother, using the reasonings as we did this morning, and then recognizing the kindness when they were your mother, or remembering their kindness. And then you recollect the special kindness of sentient beings when they were not your mother. And you can do meditations like we did yesterday on the kindness of others. You know, all these beings who work, who give their life to produce all these things or engage in activities that all contribute to us having what we are having. You think about their kindness. And so these sentient beings exist in this life, but they also existed in our past life, and they also existed in the life before that. And then you meditate on the equality of self and others. We are all the same. We all have the same wish. We all want to be happy. We all want to be free of suffering. We are all equal in that. And then you think about the disadvantages of the self-cherishing thought, as we did just at the beginning of this session. How the self-cherishing thought is the cause of all our problems, of all our suffering. The self-cherishing thought is the thought that holds oneself to be more important than others. And even if you consciously do not think like that, you need to, like my mother would never think consciously that she was more important than the children. The children was the most important thing. And from her perspective, she would do everything that was needed. But deep down, her validity was only because she was a mother, and that needed to be reinforced again and again and again. So that's the self-cherishing thought that was underneath. And so you need to go deep down to that one and look at that one. And then we have to think about the advantages of cherishing others. How that is the cause for all happiness. And then in this method, somehow they exchange compassion and incredible love. But that doesn't matter so much. So then with a compassionate mind, you take upon yourself the suffering of sentient beings. That's what you think. If you want to free sentient beings from suffering, how do you do that? By thinking that you take it upon yourself. That is also how you exchange yourself for others. They have suffering, give it to me. I have happiness, I give it to you. That's what I visualize, I give it away. I take the suffering and I give my happiness away. And yesterday, Todd asked, are you really saying that? Yes. This practice was practiced in secret for a long time because it was seen as being so insane that if you would talk about it, people would say, that's not right. And after that, with incredible love for all sentient beings, goodness, good virtue is that. And then you generate the extraordinary intention by thinking, I have been meditating on taking upon myself the suffering of all sentient beings and giving them all my roots of virtue and my goodness. But this only has been on the level of visualization. Something is wrong with the mic. Can you hear me? Yes, Paula said yes. Okay. All right. I hope you heard me all the time. Okay, all right. So when we generate the extraordinary intention, then we can say, so far I only have been doing this practice on the level of visualization. It hasn't actually happened, but I definitely want to make it happen in reality. I will definitely take on the suffering of all sentient beings and give them all the roots of virtue and happiness that I wish for. So you think that you actually really want to do it. And then in order to fulfill that responsibility, you say, how can I do that? Only when I become a Buddha. And so therefore, I'm going to become a Buddha in order to help all sentient beings. And so how we practice that is we practice it on the breath. And so when you practice it on the breath, you can feel what is causing our biggest suffering, and I'm going to stop this sharing. What is causing us our biggest suffering is the aversion that we have to unpleasant experiences. Remember, the aversion causes, well, the experience itself is only 5%. And then the attachment that we have towards pleasurable experiences. So what we do is when we have suffering, or we think of suffering, or we see somebody else suffer and we recognize that suffering, we say, instead of having aversion, we say, give it to me. I take it on. So what you're doing, you will feel your suffering that you have due to your reaction to unpleasant feelings. That becomes less. That becomes less. And so you're going to feel better and better and better. And so then with the happiness that you experience, instead of saying that's for me, that's mine, instead of your attachment, you say, I give it away. I want them to be just as happy as I am. I'm going to visualize, I'm going to give it all away. And so what you're doing is you're totally transforming that mechanism of the self-grasping mind reacting with attachment and aversion, and you change it into totally the opposite. So what is the real cause for all your problems? You just reverse it. And then when you practice, the more you practice, the more you feel the change happening. And so when you feel that you can take on the suffering, and that makes you feel more relaxed and good, you get more confidence and you get more courage. And so then, the High Lamas, what they do is they keep doing this practice on the rhythm of the breath. And then when they get cancer, they say, fantastic, what I prayed for all the time, That is again, showing their practice, I don't think I would be able to do that, but not at the moment, but that is how they think. And we think, oh, I'm too scared, if they have cancer and I think I take it on, I might get the cancer, right? That's our self-cherishing mind. But if we are courageous, we say, give it to me, I'll take it. Our mother would say, give it to me, I'll take it. I prefer to be sick myself. I do not want my children to be sick. That attitude is, in terms of health, it actually protects you from getting sick. Because it was your attachment that makes you sick. It is your anger that disturbs your mind so much, that disturbs also the physical body. So when you turn that around, you actually create the causes of a better health. So what we are doing now with the virus is the wrong way. We should walk out and say, give me the virus, I'll take it upon me, Let me die, let me go through the process on behalf of all sentient beings so that they cannot get sick, so that they do not suffer from this. When you pray to get the virus on behalf of all sentient beings, it's not going to come. Unless you have really the karma to get it, then it will come, no matter what you pray. But if there is a possibility that you could get it, then it's not going to come. So that's how we practice. Crazy, isn't it? Oh, you said we cannot hear you. You cannot hear you. I'm so sorry. Could we see ignorance as a currency? You have these interesting questions, Emilio. I have no idea what you mean with that. Can you explain that further? So Pretty says the example you gave makes sense when that person that you feel aversion to actually does something to help you or shows concern for you. But what if that person does things to hurt you and disrespects you? So sometimes it can be that we are really good friends with somebody and then they start to hurt us. What do we do? So when people hurt us, on the physical level, you do whatever you feel you need to be doing. If you feel like, I do not want to be here, you walk away, right? But in your mind, you try not to make that person into an enemy. You try not to indulge into your aversion as a result of the hurt. But you try to take on the hurt and said, okay, somehow that came to me. And you sit with it and you feel it. And, you can even wonder, is that person right? Maybe what they're saying is right. And then you check and you come to a conclusion. Well, actually, he or she was right. Or you say, no, that was not right. Then, if it's not true what they're saying, leave it with them. It's their projection of their mind, You have nothing to do with that. And if they keep projecting these things on your mind, it is okay to have physical distance, but don't let it upset your mind. And if you're very far on the path, you don't mind being with people who disrespect you and who treat you badly. Many high lamas have people around them who do that, and they use that for their practice, and they use that for doing Tonlang practice. But it depends on where you are at, and if you feel like I really don't want to, and you get very upset, just move away from that. But then maybe use it also for your practice to send love to that person and send happiness to that person. And I've heard many stories from people who do use these people who are hurtful and disrespectful. They use them in their meditation and they send love to them. And then somehow something changes in the relationship. So that is a nice thing that you could see if that works for you as well. Okay, can't hear you. Maybe a question for tomorrow if you have more time. So when we practice the giving and taking, that is the practice for our mind. And we do that with the motivation to help others. How can we best help others when we develop our full potential? How do we develop our full potential? When we stop following our self-cherishing mind and when we transform that in a mind that is cherishing others. So the practice that we are doing is actually very selfish. It's for us, so that we transform our mind, so that we develop our full potential. Right? It's not that the main effect is going to be in that other person. The main effect is going to be in our mind. So His Holiness calls that being wisely selfish. And so when you practice that in your own mind, you will become much less reactive and you will be much more mature, and people will see that, and you will become a role model, you know, like you would like your mother to be. And so then people are going to see that, and maybe they come and say, what are you doing? How come you know, I saw that person abusing you, but you had no reaction. What do you do? And then you can explain. And of course, in order for them to become free from suffering, they need to practice that themselves. Right? We cannot liberate sentient beings from their suffering by doing this practice. But we can develop our own potential so that whatever we are doing in relationship to that sentient being might help them to find their way. But everyone has to walk their own way. Yeah, I will share that, the 11-point instruction in the resources or in the Google Drive, right? In that folder. Yes. So the highly meditators, there are many stories of Tibetan lamas in Chinese prison who got tortured so much, and that His Holiness asked, were you afraid? And they said, yes, because I almost one or twice I thought about giving up my practice. So they feel that is the main thing to protect the mind. So Tonglang, there were two more questions. One was about, so yes, sure, it is our collective karma to experience this, you know. And it is, even if what we're experiencing is not maybe directly coming from the virus, but more from the rules that are put upon us, that is also our karma. Yes, it is, you know, it is. The karma of killing. And we do have to find a way forward, that's true, you know. But if we disconnect too far from humanity, I do think every time we lose something. But I also, you know, that's how it is. His Holiness says, when everything, you know, gets destroyed here, we just go to another planet and have our life there. And I also believe that when we practice this path, that no matter where, no matter what kind of conditions, we will meet that path again. We will meet teachers again. No matter how it seems to disappear out of the world, you know, individually, you will still be able to do that. That is what the teachers say. And I do have some faith in that, you know. Yes. So Warren, are you going to be here tomorrow? Let me see, where's Warren? He's not here. Okay. I'm going to think you're going to be here tomorrow, and otherwise I answer your question tomorrow. And there was a question from Emilio about food and taking care of yourself. I'm not sure if I should talk about that. What do you think? We can do that tomorrow. Let's see if we can do that tomorrow. So my idea for tomorrow, so I have a meditation on Tonglen to finish these teachings. And then tomorrow, I thought about doing the 8 verses of mind transformation. Maybe, Felipe, can you put up a poll, a yes, no poll, and see if people like that? Let's see how fast, yes. Yeah, perfect. So would you be interested in doing the 8 verses of mind transformation tomorrow for whoever is going to be here? And maybe you don't know what it is. It is a short text of 8 verses of 4 lines, which gives, it's a very inspiring text to transform the mind from the self-cherishing mind into the mind cherishing others. Seems that people like it. Then if there would still be some time, I can talk about how to transform problems into happiness, you know, just a few tips for that. Would you be all right with that? I think I'm going to assume you are. You can tell me otherwise tomorrow. So let's do that tomorrow. And what I will do is I will do a session and I will kind of teach for an hour, and then I will leave a lot of time for questions. And if you feel like it, then we can also share. I can let you talk if you want. Maybe we do a poll on that, Felipe. Are you more comfortable with sharing in the chat? Or would you like to share verbally?
I can only do yes, no right now.
Yes, please do that. Okay, so these are the 2 options. Sharing in the chat is yes, and sharing verbally is you have to say no. You know, that maybe sounds a little bit weird, but that is the second option. So which one do you prefer? The first one, which is sharing in the chat, or you would like to speak? I think as a group is better so that we can hear your comments. What do you mean with that? Okay, so 2/3 of the people would like to talk and 4 would like to share in the chat. And of course, it can be that you like to share in the chat because you do not want to hear other people endlessly talking, but maybe you feel shy to talk, you know. So if the last thing is the case, you can always use the chat and say, no, I do not like to speak, that's fine. But I also would like to give some people an opportunity to ask questions or share. And at the same time, I'm going to ask you to not tell us your whole story, but try to give the main point that you want to express. Is that all right? Yeah. So sometimes it can be really helpful to hear other people's question, especially when we're talking about developing the heart. You know, sometimes when you hear people ask a question, I know that from teachings, and when you sit with a group, you know that the group can see exactly what is going on for that person, and it is almost like everyone kind of knows how to answer. But then because of that energy, it becomes quite powerful in being present, you know, with the person who asked the question with loving kindness and compassion. And that can be a wonderful way of sharing. So we will have two sessions tomorrow, the same time as today. So 11 o'clock in the morning, Indian time, and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And there will be two different sessions. So I will try to go through at least 4 of the verses in the morning, and then the rest in the afternoon. And at the moment, so we will make the discussion group together, right? So we don't have separate discussion groups when you can talk together. We make it a little bit more loose, a little bit more sharing and caring on the informal level. So just for the clarification, I never said that there is not a virus and that the virus is not contagious, right? I just say that it is part of life and that we are all responsible for our own life. And that we have to be careful that we do not turn each and every sentient being into a potential killer and therefore into an enemy, you know, because not just for that other sentient being, but for our own heart. We build up walls in our own heart when we view others like that. So keep your heart open, even if you want to be on the distance, even if you want to follow the rules, you know, I don't care how you feel most safe, that is what you have to do, but never lose your humanity. Never lose the connection with your heart, never lose the love for sentient beings. Never lose your compassion, never lose your connection. Call it physical distancing, you know, but socially try to be very close. Connect on the social level. All right, meditation on compassion. Through Tonglen, right? So it is called meditation on compassion, and we start with ourselves, and if maybe also our loved ones, but I do not want to hurry it up too much. And then tomorrow we'll do it for the strangers and for the people that we have difficulty with. Okay. So make yourself comfortable. And let your mind calm down. What And then bring to mind a problem that is currently troubling you. And it might be best to start with a small or a medium-sized problem rather than with your biggest one. So you can have a physical problem like a painful or uncomfortable feeling or an illness. Or it can also be something emotionally, such as sadness or hurt or loneliness. So allow the problem to arise in your mind and feel how painful it is. And observe how your mind wants to push it away. Talk kindly to yourself. So when you breathe in, visualize that you accept the problem, that you allow it to come close. Every time you breathe in, you take it on more. And then think, I'm not the only person in the world experiencing a problem like this. There are so many others. And think of other people who may be experiencing the same or a similar problem. Some to an even greater degree than yourself. Generate compassion for them by thinking and also really feeling how wonderful it will be if all those people could be free from their suffering. And then decide that you take on your own experience of this problem with a compassionate wish that by doing so, all those other people will be free from their suffering. So you think, by me experiencing this problem, may all sentient beings who have a similar problem be relieved from all their suffering. And you visualize that you breathe in your problem. Let go of your resistance, your fear, and your aversion towards your problem. You breathe in your problem. You're totally willing to take it upon yourself And by doing so, you visualize that all sentient beings who experience something similar become free from their problem. Allow your mind to rest in a gentle, peaceful acceptance of the problem. Feel happy that you have freed all sentient beings from their problems, that you had the courage to take on that responsibility, that you have experienced it on their behalf, that you had the courage to open your heart like this. And then rejoice that you have this capacity, taking on your suffering, and at the same time releasing others from their suffering. And by doing so, your mind becomes more peaceful, more calm, more confident, more courageous. And if you feel that doing this meditation is beneficial for you, then remind yourself that in order to make this into a real strength that we have, we need to practice this again and again. We need to habituate our mind to this kind of attitude. And the more we do that, the more it will become our nature to feel like this, to do this. And then to finish this meditation and this session and this 6-day course, I would like to read a little dedication from Shantideva, who also brought us the method of exchanging oneself for others. It's a little dedication. So whatever merit we have created by participating, by discussing, by the journaling that you did, by meditating, by actively thinking about things, by asking questions, all the merit that we have created, and that is a huge amount of merit. We dedicate that. And if you want, you can visualize all that merit in the form of light in your heart. And while I read the dedication prayer, you can let that flow out into the world to all sentient beings, touching each and every one of them, bringing them freedom from suffering and the temporary and the ultimate happiness that they are so wishing for. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with the mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the hopeless find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests, and may all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and the people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So thank you very much for being here. Those who don't see tomorrow, I wish you all the best, all the happiness and success that you are longing for. And for those who are going to be here tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow at the same time as today. Thank you very much for being here.